It's no problem.
Of
Yeah.
course. Thank you so
It'll
much.
be a different backdrop, but we can figure it out.
Huh, right. Because even I think the voice quality won't be that good right now, right?
Yeah. Maybe this gives you something to work with. But she she asked me. I went to him, and he well, I'll say it now, but maybe you can edit it out.
Okay.
But he said, "Shit just comes out of my mouth," you know. I was like, okay. But I think actually he's more clever than that, and he's a very interesting man. And he has. I used to say that he would mangle language, but now I want to revise myself. I was wrong to say that over the years. He's a very interesting person. He's very smart, and he has an interesting use of language. It's very memorable, you know. So I think I'm just guessing, but when the officers go to West Point and they're trained in college, if they get in trouble, if I understand this, sometimes they have to go to a thing called the hurt box, this imaginary box on the ground, and they have to go do push-ups. For punishment, you know what I mean?
So it's a physical thing.
Yeah, so that, but it's imaginary too. So they go to the hurt box, which isn't as evocative or as interesting as locker. There's something about the word locker and the hurt locker. That's not locker instead of the hurt box. It's not. It doesn't. You don't feel it. It's more visceral.
It's metaphorical. You can say, right?
Yeah, you feel it in your body. And she did her work, and she found in 1966 in a small Texas newspaper. It was the first use in print of that phrase, and it had to do with the local football game, the high school team, and the war in Vietnam.
Okay.
So I often say that it's Mark Twain. He says history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right?
Right.
So it's sort of like, you know.
Sort of like right. Okay. So you used many Arabic words in that. You took epigraphs are mainly from Arabic culture, their holy scripture.
Yeah.
So I believe that was a conscious choice on your part. So and very first, it was Soldiers Arabic, the very first poem in that. So did you make kind of a connection with them, or why did you incorporate their language?
Well, I felt like it was their land. You know, I was a foreigner, an occupier in their world. You know, and I was also fascinated by where was I, and I remember thinking at a very practical level, but a deep spiritual kind of level. Like, I don't know what happens when we die. I remember I met a photographer in America, and she used to go to the Civil War battlefields to photograph, and she said she could feel the spirits of the dead there. You know, it was very haunting. You know, and I had that in my mind when I went to Iraq. I was like, is that how it works? Like, if I were killed, would I be left on some rooftop for eternity among people, and I don't know the language, and I don't understand the culture? So it was a profound thing that I didn't understand. You know, but that was in my mind. Also, before I left, I wanted to understand the world where I was going as much as possible. So, right in September of 2003, before we left, King's College London put out an anthology called Iraqi Poetry Today.
Okay.
And so I got that, and I carried it with me in my assault pack. So I was reading these poems in translation while I was there, and that affected a lot. That created a conversation for me in writing these poems. But again, I didn't think anyone would read this book or whatever. I didn't even know I was writing a book. I would just write it in my notebook. Other than maybe my family or some friends, you know, because no one read the other ones.
Of course. You know? At that time, you never thought of. I think even it'll come out in a book form.
Sure. I'm glad it did like that. I've had that first poem though, "A Soldier's Arabic." I have some problems with that now. Like I wish I had not put that as the first poem, or even put it in the book, because I think it's there's something not true enough about it. It's this idea to be spoken, it must be earned. You know, it's very much a soldier's motto. Like you can't talk about this unless you've been there. You know,
yes.
That all of America was there. Like the clothes I wore and everything was supplied by them. You know, even if they don't know it, they're part of the war, whether they want to be or not. It's very complicated, but there's a connection. But that old sort of approach of saying you have to have the experience to write about it, it's not an old approach. It's about cultural appropriation and misrepresentation and appropriation, even in the ranks of soldiers in the experience. You know, so I I don't think I was thinking about that very clearly at the time, but afterwards I thought about this. And that particular poem it feels like it closes a door on many people who are connected to that experience.
Okay.
Maybe they didn't have my experience. I mean, they surely didn't. There's millions of experiences, but all are welcome into that difficult problem and experience. You know? So that poem, I would probably cut it now if I.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what the first impression was on me was that why you incorporated or why you put this particular poem on the very first page is that
Yeah.
that maybe you wanted to pay tribute, you wanted
Yeah.
to pay a kind of wanted to respect them and wanted to show that you respected their culture, and you made them feel special, that though you were
Yeah.
like enemies there.
Yeah. I'm with you.
But
I agree on all of that.
yes.
It's just the last note of the poem. I don't agree with that note.
Okay.
I think
Okay,
it's too small of a note at the end. Yeah. But it rings true to other veterans. They read it and they're like, yeah, they're like, yes, that's
Yes.
right.
Right.
But what about everybody else? So.
Yes.
But
yes,
and that's throughout the book too. When I was incorporating other voices, I wanted to be in conversation, and I thought it was important to hear, ideas, even though they're translated into English, to get a sense of some conversation. Because I could see on the news, that America was not, like I myself included, wasn't steeped in Iraqi history. I knew about Gilgamesh, and I was fascinated by that. When I finished high school, I wrote a list of books I thought I should have read, and that was one of them. It was a version that I read, and that it feels like as a poet, Gilgamesh is where the spoken word crosses over to the written language, and so it's so foundational. And then I found myself in Iraq, in Mosul, in the northern part, Mosul, and there's a large city park in there, and it was snowing, so the snow, there's these hills on the outside of the park, so you have to walk over the hills and then into the center, and it's very big, it's this park. So off in the distance in the snow, you could see people who are homeless because of the war, and they've fled there, and they've created these sort of whatever they could find to make small homes, and there's fire smoke going. There's clouds above where the ambient light of the city is reflecting. I'm wearing night vision goggles. I was on point, so I'm the first soldier, and then we're all spread out, and we're walking in as a platoon, about 40 or 48 of us. So, and I remember thinking about my job. I was thinking about the wind direction of the smoke and dogs, so we didn't want to get upwind of the dogs, so they'd bark at us. I was thinking about tracks in snow. We're not doing anything about that. You could follow us right in, trying to do my job. But at the same time, I remember thinking, the reason this is a park and is preserved because these are the ruins of Nineveh. And this is where Gilgamesh was written down and shared through whole civilizations, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, down to Madera, California, where I was raised, and one English version that I fell in love with. So, yeah.
So I will just ask my last question as
Sure.
right? So the title of my thesis is Bearing to Witness.
The title of which?
My PhD thesis is Bearing to Witness. So what is witnessing according to you? Like witnessing is like testifying, and you are keeping things in your mind just to tell any other person.
Yeah.
These sorts of definitions they prevail. So what according to you, or what according to a poet, a witnessing is, and how is it different from a normal person witnessing?
Well, I love journalism. I was talking to a very interesting journalist last night, and she does amazing work. And I'm a fan of journalism. I've done a little bit, but it's not professional, just hack journalism. But I love reading, and their work is so important. But there were journalists in Iraq, sometimes getting some of the stories. But let's say there's an explosion, and 4 people are killed, and there's 11 wounded. Right? So in the paper, they might not even say FOUR, because that's more space. They'll take 4 human lives and they'll put them down into this letter, this number 4. And so we need that information. We need to know this is happening. So they have a very important job. But I think part of the poet's work is to pull the humanity out of the news in terms of the poetry witness. It's to think, who is inside that number? What did we lose? And what did they love? Who did they care about? Well, when we talk about loss, what are we talking about? At a much deeper level than 4 people and 11 wounded. That kind of
See, now you're an established poet, right? So do you think it's a kind of a burden on your shoulders that you have to write for somebody, you have to, fulfill somebody's, desire, you must have purpose while writing, you can't write for yourself? These kinds of questions, they often come to my mind. Even does a poet, an established poet, ever write for himself?
Yeah. Yes.
You write for
I do.
yourself.
I put out 3 books last year.
Yes.
It could take my career. Maybe no one ever wants to read my work again. I don't know. Maybe they don't like them, but I had to write them. So it was, and I think it's important that writers, as much as possible, stay true to their experience, so that they discover something. I believe in the act of discovery. That writing is a way to see a little further into the darkness, and to come back with that poetry news from that discovery in language and experience. And that's we can write. If we want to be popular, we could try to do that, and then maybe make money and sell and all that. But if nobody, I know that I've written 7 other books before, no one wanted to read them, and I did many jobs. And I know that if nobody reads my next books, the ones I write, if I'm lucky, that I will still write them.
Yes.
Because I write them, and I know this sounds selfish, but I write them first for myself. It's the tool that I have that works best for trying to understand this world. And the language is, it does something that this language, I struggle with this all day long, every day, every year, all my life. I had a massive stammer when I was childhood into my 20s, well into my 20s. So I had trouble speaking, that I would listen. And then when I finally was able to figure out how to make sentences and say them out loud, I was like, what are you going to say? What am I going to say? It's a world that needs love, but also needs to see things as they are, and maybe I can be one part of that conversation.
You're not selfish at all. I would just say that. Right, but thank you so much for giving me this time.
I would add one more thing.
Yes.
I think it's the job. If I don't really see myself as this established. I get it. On paper, on the resume, I can see that. But when I'm walking around town, I'm just Brian. I can go to these big conferences with lots of poets, and then inside I get a lot of attention, and my ego can get very big. But all I have to do is step outside the door, out here. Nobody knows me, and it's a beautiful thing.
Exactly.
And it keeps me grounded in the earth. And many of my friends do too, because some of them aren't poets. So they're like, "Oh, great, you got a new book? Okay, let's go do the something." Because they have their lives too. They appreciate what I do, but we have a bigger life together.
Well, that is just not the only thing that matters.
The work, but there is a responsibility for established writers to help writers who are coming up. That's the way I was helped by writers before me. So each of us finds different ways to try to do that, but we have to. I fail many times, but I think it's important for us to try to help the next generation and the generation after to come. Find their way. So, suicide is a real thing. Loneliness, depression, all these things are real, and maybe poetry is a way for people to find a healthy center to live inside of.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. It's beautiful. It's you have a really beautiful soul. I loved really talking to you, and thank you for giving me time. Thank you so much.
All right, we got it.
Yes, we got it this time.